In case anyone missed it, Tom Pelisero was on the Rich Eisen Show on Friday. And we're going to play the entire 4-minute clip for you guys, so there's no misconstruing what was said. You will hear it exactly from the horse's mouth himself. But Tom Pelisero was on the Rich Eisen Show Friday describing some of the intricacies of how the Browns are handling their interview process for their open head coaching position. So this is from the Rich Eisen Show on Friday, Tom Pelisero. Take a listen.
Jimmy Haslam bristled at the Browns front office and operation being termed dysfunctional. That said, we're sitting here the Friday before championship weekend. The job is still open from the first Monday of the coaching cycle. Word is they are not Rooney Rule compliant. They cannot hire somebody right now. The Bills might be looking at somebody that they want to hire. The Bills are already Rooney Rule compliant. Their job's been open a fraction of the time, and we're reading about people pulling their names out of consideration for the Browns head coaching job. What is happening there, Tom Pelissero?
First of all, I would say Andrew Berry is the last person who is just going to interview somebody solely to fulfill the Rooney Rule.
Correct.
If he's conducting an interview, he wants it to be with someone who's a real candidate. Mike McDaniel would have fulfilled that. He decided that he just didn't want to follow through on that job coming off of his initial Zoom here. So that's one factor. You're right. They're the only team that has not conducted a single qualifying interview. That'll change, or is scheduled to change next week when they have a second interview with Nate Scheelhaase from the Rams. I would just say this. The Browns search process and interview process, which they have run a number of times, is unlike any other in the NFL. And it plays to certain types of candidates. They are a data-driven operation in Cleveland. And so they spend an extraordinary amount of time gathering data on their coaching candidates. You're talking about taking a personality test. You're talking about writing an essay. You're talking about completing homework assignments going into both the first and the second rounds of interviews. It plays toward the types of candidates that they have in the mix, which is very, very smart people in a lot of cases that just often happen to be tall, thin guys who came from Ivy League schools, so that's certainly not a requirement. That's the type of candidate generally that is going to fit into a data-driven environment. So
there's a written test? There's a written test, huh? Really? Like they want you to write an essay? This is why I want to be the coach of the Cleveland Browns? Or
questionnaires, a multi-part essay, a personality test, and then additional homework assignments if you get through the first round to get into the second round. Which you can imagine then.
The answer can't be Google me? Like you can't go Signetti? I know I'm being flippant, Tom, but that to me, I don't know. You're hopping around the country interviewing for jobs, kids, spouses, boxes being packed because you've hit the road and you're going to sit down and write an essay? You could imagine
then when certain candidates decide not to follow through on interviews, part of it may be that it's more than just show up in a nice suit and answer questions in the room. And that speaks to how the Browns organization operates.
Sure.
Paul DePodesta got there 10 years ago. He built out a massive data and analytics department. Those people have a strong voice in everything that the Browns do. There's a lot of time that is consumed once you're on the job with those conversations. And so the interview process is kind of a preview of that. So we'll see what direction their search goes.
Sure.
Again, Grant Udinski, Nate Scheelhaase, two big brain dudes who, again, happen to be tall, thin guys.
Nice.
They both are in the mix. Udinski's there now. Scheelhaase expected to interview on Monday. If it's not one of those two, then the other candidates that we know of as of right now are Jim Schwartz, who's the defensive coordinator, who they want to keep regardless, and Todd Monken, who does not fit in any of the categories that I just mentioned, other than he's a very intelligent guy who's run successful offenses in the NFL. I would tell you, Rich, the sense is the Browns are very intrigued by the Udinski and Scheelhaase possibilities because they're both guys who are, Grant just turned 30. He's in his first year as the Jaguars OC, but he's unbelievably brilliant. Scheelhaase is in his mid-30s, was at Iowa State most recently with the Rams. Those guys fit the pattern. If ultimately the Browns on their scorecards that they collect do not decide that those guys are the best candidates, then the belief within the league is the default would be Jim Schwartz, then you're trying to figure out, all right, well, now what do you do on offense to pair him? Who is willing to take that offensive coordinator job? There's just a lot of steps in the process, Rich, but the Browns, this is not new. They have done this for a long time, and it's just, as one high-powered coaching agent said to me the other day when we were going through the list of all the openings, the Browns are the Browns. Their process is different than everyone else's, and we'll see where it leads them this time.
So, Bull,
the Browns is the Browns.
what do you make of that?
Well, I mean, listen, it's easy to pile on and say, well, if the Browns are unique, they're probably doing it wrong. It's probably stupid. And that's probably true. Now, I could argue that at least for a time, I thought they got it right with Kevin Stefanski. So maybe the process did work with him. The coaches they hired before that, not so much. But in reality, well, I don't know this for a fact, but it seems like they went full data driven when in 2020 2020, when Stefanski and Berry came in. That's when they went all in on the data. So I still probably think it's stupid. If the Browns are the only team doing it this way, it's probably wrong. I also think it's ironic that everybody thinks Andrew Berry loves Shedeur Sanders, and yet Tom Pelissero is telling you, well, they do everything data-driven more than any other team, and the data is not good for Shedeur Sanders. The only thing good for Shedeur Sanders is the eye test. There have been some things that are good. But in terms of the data is terrible. So that doesn't compute. But in terms of just the coach stuff, yeah, I mean, I have a little trouble trusting that the Browns are getting it right and everybody else is getting it wrong.
Jason?
I'm not going to kill them for this. I know, again, it's easy to dunk on them, and people have had a field day punching down on the Browns for a couple of weeks now over how this has gone. And you know, part of it is I kind of knew that they were going to struggle with this coaching search. I told you guys that. There's a lot of people are going to be turned off by this job. But in this instance, like, a couple things can be true. And like, if this was the Eagles or the Patriots or the Ravens that doing this, everyone would think it's brilliant and everybody would be copying it. Right. But because it's the Browns, everybody makes fun of them and laughs at them and says, oh, it's just the Browns being the Browns. The reality is, if they're following the same process that they followed in the past, that's the process that led them to Sean McDermott and Kevin Stefanski. And instead they hired Hugh Jackson and Freddie Kitchens. So the process played out. I don't think now, would Sean McDermott have had the success here?
No,
probably not. But that's what this process pointed them to, was Sean McDermott. And then Jimmy went full Jimmy and hired Hugh. And this process led them to Kevin, and Jimmy, or Dorsey, went full Dorsey and hired Freddie. So I don't know that necessarily it's a bad process. I knew a little bit about some of the personality tests, like some of the homework and stuff like that. I'd never heard that before. I don't know. I mean, Tom's really good. I'm not disputing any of Tom's reporting at all. But I poked around. I reached out to a couple executives in the NFL and the NBA to sort of say, like, hey, is this normal? Do you guys do this? And I got a little bit like, yeah, we do a little bit with personality testing and stuff like that. With the Browns, you also have to look at are they going to make John Harbaugh do homework and fill out a personality test? You kind of know who John Harbaugh is, right? That's true. You know who Jim Schwartz is. But some of these guys, like, who knows who Grant Udinsky is? Who knows who Nate Shieldhouse is? Like, when these guys are real young like this, you kind of need all the information you can get. And the best answer I thought I got was, like, data's good, data's important, but it kind of looks like, and this person was by no means ripping the Browns. This was not a making fun of the Browns. It was if you're doing all this, I'm not sure that you know what you're looking for, because it's hard to find leadership on a test. Leadership, you're not going to be able to evaluate leadership based on answers on a piece of paper. Like, you kind of have to see it. And as we talked about, leadership is a big part of this job, and sort of managing the fires that come with being a head coach. And it's hard to quantify that on any sort of test. So I'm not going to kill him at all for this. Because I think it has borne fruit in the past doing it this way. And so I hear what they're saying, like, I don't know if they know what they're looking for, but at the same time, I think the process that leads to Sean McDermott was correct, and I think the process that led to Kevin Stefanski was correct. So I'm not going to kill him for it.
G?
Yeah, I didn't know what Rich was, when he said, I got to do all this stuff. You can just Google me. I'm like, well, the NFL has shown you for years and years and years that they do this all the time. Like, regular players come to the combine. You know what they do? Interview.
Yeah.
You know what they do? Personality test. You know what they do? Training. They run. They do a mix of different things. As a matter of fact, one of the people talked about with Shedeur Sanders was his interview process. He said, hey, we gave you a playbook. The Giants gave you a playbook. You were supposed to find the incorrect notion or incorrect play in the playbook because we put some faulty plays in there to see if you really had digested it and talked about it and looked at it. And he didn't know what the play was. He didn't. So that moved him down. His interview process alone moved him to the 5th round. So the reality is the NFL has always been about showing people and being about, hey, putting you through a battery of tests. Not only that, but they ask you crazy questions. You know why they ask you crazy questions? Like, hey, what sexual orientation is your mom? Because they want to know what your temperament is, your disposition. If you are a first-time coach, you've never called plays, you don't have a Rolodex of people who can vouch for you. You just got here 5-6 years ago, and I'm going to make you the de facto leader of my organization. You're damn right I'm about to send you a personality test. You're going to get a math test, an essay test. If you're ready, you can just throw it in Chat GPT if you just want to just say it. Like, here you go. Change a couple things right there. But for me, I think a lot of people are kind of like, and I don't know where they're at. When I was in corporate America, every single job that I ever had a presentation that I had to present based on a corporate problem that they had in their infrastructure, a personality test, as well as a math competency test. If you didn't pass the math portion, you didn't even get the second interview. It was just what it was. Like, so these are all things that I think are kind of overblown a little bit. And clearly, if you're hiring a first-time head coach for a job that gives generational type money and is going to be the most powerful position besides the general manager or the owner, I expect you to have to do a battery of things to prove that you're ready for that type of position.
Well, I guess you guys now think the Browns are the smartest organization in football because
No, I didn't say that. I didn't say
well,
that.
I mean, but if this is, and again, I don't have a huge problem with it, but
look at, again, they led him to Sean McDermott and Kevin Stefanski.
I don't think Sean McDermott's anything to write home over personally, but
He's better than Hugh Jackson.
He's 98 and 50 in his career. I know a lot of that's Josh Allen, but
I mean, come on, guys.
Who would you rather, Sean McDermott or Hugh Jackson as your head coach?
I guess Sean McDermott, but the truth is, Hugh Jackson.
I guess. Come on, stop being disingenuous.
The point is, Sean McDermott, if he had been hired by the Browns, wouldn't have a good record.
But we don't know that.
But they would have probably. I bet you they've been better than 1-31.
We have no clue about that.
Yeah.
We have no way of knowing that.
Everything we talk about is a guess, guys. I mean, we're all, most of the stuff we're talking about. So the Browns have a process that's unlike any other team. And we're trying to turn Sean McDermott into Kevin Stefanski, who you don't like, G, into some genius head coaches. I mean, they're both
I'm not
adequate guys.
No, I'm talking about the process. The outcome is different. The process is I want to know as much information as I can on a limited basis in a very quick time period.
You can find out information without making somebody write an essay.
How?
There's a million different ways. You could ask them questions. I don't know. Why every other team finds a way to do it. You think other teams are not getting? You think the Browns are getting more information than other teams?
Here's what I want to know. If you want a job, and you're energetic for the job and you love the job and you think you're a good fit for the job, are you going to put your best foot forward and put the time, energy, and effort into putting something together to show these folks that I want to do it? Yes, you are. That's part of it.
If 31 teams are not asking you to write an essay and one team is, that one team is probably wrong.
Hey, well, listen, I'm just telling you, my whole experience
is irrelevant. In this business, 31 teams are not doing it. One team is.
You know what's irrelevant? Those are 31 teams. If you want to interview for my team and you want my job, this is where you go.
Well, maybe that's why nobody wants the job.
That's fine.
But I also think it matters of who they're looking at. And, like when I was first coming out, I went through some grueling interview processes. When I got the job at The Athletic, They came to me and said, what do you want?
Right. Yeah.
So it's about where you're at in your career.
Thank you. That's perfect.
And what's on the resume and what you've shown. That's why I said John Harbaugh, they're not going to make if they make John Harbaugh go through that, then they're foolish. Then that's really silly. But
and Jim Schwartz,
what's that?
Hey, my big point on this is I got to imagine this is candidate specific. I can't foresee a world where the Browns are asking Jim Schwartz, who's been in the building for 3 years, to write some essay and take another personality test.
If they're doing that, then that's ridiculous.
Yes.
And that's silly.
And that's a waste of time
the Browns have not done anything silly before. So
of course they have. But I'm just saying, if you're dealing with guys who have only been in the league for a couple of years, you can make calls on them and you can ask around. But there's only so much you're going to know because there's a limited amount of information. So if you're going to try and get more information on those guys, I don't have a problem with that. If that's why they dipped out on the process, then so be it. Again, I just think there's so much that the Browns do wrong that you can look at and say that was a disaster. And I think we point it out all the time. I'm not going to kill them over this because I actually think the process, and it's the only thing that I've defended. Even I wish Jay was on today, because I was going to this is the one thing that I thought DePodesta was good at was identifying coaches. And I think that when you look at,
call him the boogeyman.
What's that?
Please call him the boogeyman.
But I do think that the process that led them to some of his suggestions was a good process. And if that's the process that they're following, I tend to believe that it is. I don't have an issue with it.
By the way, right now, much more importantly, I'm obsessed with continuously writing down our high number of live views, as you can see here. I'm like, we've hit a high of 4386 about a minute ago. That's
what people got nothing to do today. They're stuck at home, more than likely.
So we appreciate everyone tuning in. But no, I when I first saw the clip, I was like, wow. I was more on both sides of the Browns are the only team doing this. I texted, and I don't have a Rolodex like Jason, but I do know 2 head coaches around sports. I was like, what was your process? And none of them had interviews, or none of them had essays they had to write beforehand. But then you think about to what G said, Udinsky, and Shieldhouse are they're babies in the NFL. I'm not saying they're babies in the coaching world, babies in the NFL. I feel like if you're going to put the investment into them to be the face of your franchise, which, let's be honest, the head coach right now is the face of a franchise unless you have a superstar quarterback. The Browns may have one on their roster. He's just not there yet. More likely than not, they don't have one on the roster. So for the time being, this head coach who they hire is going to be the guy who we all kind of look to as the voice, the face, whether we like Stefanski or not, whether we agreed with how he handled the media or not. Those are things that you may be able to get a little better. You're not going to find out definitively. You're not going to get every answer, but you can get a little more information by kind of going through some of these unconventional, I'll call them, interview tactics. And to Jason's point, it led him to McDermott. Jimmy went against the grain and they hired Hugh Jackson. It led him to Stefanski in 19. They hired Freddie Kitchens. It led him back to Stefanski in 2020. The results haven't been disastrous. And unless it's disastrous and you believe in the process, I think you kind of got to stick with what you believe works and hope it pans out.
That's true.
More than anything.
I guess the Bills are going to just hire Grant Udinsky willy-nilly and not ask for any information from him.
I don't think they're going to hire him at all.
Of course not.
More than anything, I think what the process is you got to understand how these dudes going to handle it. Reality is the Cleveland Browns are going to be the talk of the town everywhere in NFL. And it doesn't matter if you're good or bad. You're going to be the number one story pretty much until you either are out of the playoffs or you get done or you're eliminated or you're terrible next year. The Browns, based on who they have on their roster, will be the number one story. Everything you say can and will be used against you in a court of public opinion. So I need to know how you move. How do you handle these questions? What are you thinking about this? Do you you have to notice, especially from guys who haven't had cameras in their faces. Like these guys are coordinators or position group guys. These guys haven't been forced to talk every single week or every single week. They haven't been every day. They ain't used to that. So if you think that people get tired of hearing about Shedeur Sanders and Deshaun Watson, you better doggone well figure out if you got a head coach that is strong enough mentally, is smart enough to communicate in a way where you can diffuse landmines before you step on them. Those are the things you need to figure out prior to you getting a headset, because the headset isn't where the problems start. It's the stuff you got to do to even get on the field to call a game is the stuff that really can bog you down, especially if you ain't used to it.
I would just say there's probably better ways to find out that information from people than writing an essay. They're not going to have to write an essay ever once they're a head coach.
But let me ask you this, or Jason, you go first. And I got an example.
Like I don't know that we know write an essay. Like, are we sure that they are actually having to sit down?
I'm just going based on what Pelisero said.
I know. I do think that their process is probably unique and different than everybody else. I don't know. Is it a double spaced 1,000 words? Cite your sources at the. I don't know, but the only thing I would reiterate is I thought it was a good point that a paper is not necessarily going to show you who a good leader is.
No.
And so in that, I think you have other work to do, but information is not a bad thing.
Of course not.
I don't think it's a bad thing.
So this is a basketball coach, but I happen to be very good friends with a head coach of a professional basketball team. And he was hired in the last 3 years. And his interview process went like this, Bull. And I'm just curious, show you the two different ways. And if we're going to take Pelisero's word for how the Browns do it versus how this other team does it. So he had 2 virtual interviews, basketball Q&As. They asked him to present his philosophies, how he'd run an offense, how he'd run a defense, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. He came down to being one of the 2 finalists for the job. This team flew both finalists to the city, did not tell them they just said it's going to be an all-day thing. Yeah. Come ready. They get in. The first thing they did was they sat down with the general manager in the front office, and they said, you have an ATO. There's 2.5 seconds in the clock. We need a bucket. Draw it up right now and explain why, who's where, and why you'd run it like this.
That's standard in NBA interviews.
Then they went out to the court, and they had a developmental league player and said, put him through a 20-minute workout right now. It's shooting, defense.
That makes way more sense.
And it was all in person, on the fly, no preparation. We want to see how you react in the moment to those kind of situations. And then they kind of sat down and had how would you handle situation X? How would you handle situation Y? If this player got arrested, how do you as a coach handle it? Yeah. And that was the 3-part in-person session for their interview, and they ended up getting the job based on how they did. Would you prefer Bull in that scenario? I know it's football to basketball.
I think that makes a lot more sense than writing an essay. But whatever. It's not that big a deal. I don't need to go on and on about it at this point.
And I'm sure that part is also part of the process. I mean, in the NBA, Mike and I have talked for years since the invention of the show. ATOs are such a crucial part. And what can you draw up? And Cavs did that with Blatt when they brought Blatt in. One of the guys in the room I know said, 3 seconds left, side out of bounds. What are you drawing up? And yet they still managed to hire David Blatt.
Jesus.
And who's to say that that's not part of the Browns process of, okay, there's 2:37 on the clock. We don't have the ball and we're down 6, or we do have the ball and we're down 5. What are you calling? I'm sure that that's part of it. It's not just this written is the only thing that they do. They spend all day together with some of these guys.
It's like kind of like the elevator spiel. You guys have heard of that, where you're in an elevator with a bunch of business guys or powerful people, and they ask you, what do you do? And you gotta tell somebody what you do in under like 2 sentences and don't have it be wordy and over the top. It's kind of like that. I feel like if you ask somebody to write an essay, more than likely it's just to figure out if you understand your philosophy in and out, right? Because you're going to be teaching your philosophy to a new team, and you need to know it in a way that when you're explaining it to another person, that they can not only grasp it, understand it, and digest it to a point where they can buy into it. So I think it's just basically, it's like, hey, tell me about somebody say, hey, tell me about yourself, right? I mean, I could tell you anything about myself, but I need to have it in an impactful way where it kind of makes sense to the context of what we're talking about. But look, that's one part of the equation. If you think you're gonna hire a head coach based on the essay, you're done. Or math questions, or no, it has to be a plethora thing that goes into a body of work. And most importantly is me sitting down talking with you man to man, figuring out who you are as a person.